Now, I'm going to unpack this in class again, but I just want to go over this pretty quickly so that I can discuss a related issue, and that is just the methods of suicide for the United States. So here's a graph that depicts the suicide deaths by method in 2016, and it hasn't changed much since then. So the firearm deaths represent over half of all suicide deaths, 51%. And the rates are particularly high among males. So males are more likely to use this. Females are less than, it's closer to about a third or 35% that die by firearm. And then you have next after that suffocation. So this would be hanging, and that's about a quarter. After that is poisoning, about 15%. Now, I should clarify, we know that most suicide attempts are involve poisoning, but again, this is a graph of the suicide deaths. And then all other cases, cases such as jumping from high buildings or bridges, from different types of poison, sorry, we have poisoning here, other forms is 8%. Okay, now I want to unpack the issue of firearms. We have good data to support that firearm access is a risk factor for suicide, meaning that if a person has access to firearms, they're more likely to die by suicide. Now, that's a correlational claim, but I want to persuade you that this could actually be causal in a sense. So we know that for adolescent suicides, that 72% of those who die, adolescents who die by suicide, had a firearm in their home, and that's regardless of whether they used it for their suicide or not. We know that's the case in 72% of these suicides. We know that the adolescent psychiatric inpatients, for attempters and non-attempters, there is no difference here in regards to firearm in their home. So those who have a firearm in their home are far more likely to die by suicide than those who attempt or those who don't attempt. So again, that suggests that there's greater risk if you have a firearm in your home. Another research finding that again persuades that access to firearms is a risk factor for suicide is this one here. And this compares high gun states with the low gun states. Now notice that the population is basically equivalent, 39 million versus 40 million. So in the high gun states, the gun ownership is about half of all households have a gun. In low gun states, it's about 15%. In these high gun states, you can see, let me jump down here, that the non-firearm suicides are basically equivalent. There's no difference between these two. There's slightly more, but not by much in the low gun states. But the difference is really that the firearm suicides are far more increased in these high gun states, 9,800 versus 2,600. So when you look at the total suicide rate, in the high gun states, it's 14,809, and in the low gun states, it's 8,052. Now, this may seem like a political or other issue, but I think of it as a public health issue. That when we think about firearms, oftentimes firearms come up in the context of mass shootings and school shootings. There's this debate after that says, well, should we ban firearms, assault rifles? Should we decrease the magazine capacity of rifles? But sometimes there's not enough, I would say, conversation about the role of firearms in suicide. And I think it's something that should be discussed more because the data on suicide seems to be much more clear that uh, that firearms are again a risk factor for a death by suicide. The and this doesn't have to be a political issue because you can actually frame it as if if you restrict access to those who are at risk of suicide, it can actually save their life. And so I'll unpack this a little bit more in class, but I just wanted to outline that a little bit and see if and kind of present that to you.